I've seen lots of comments of people suggesting that Chris was either pushed to commit the murders by Nichol manipulating him, or even by Shanann's needling and belittling him. And my main question was, where do these theories come from? Because as far as I'm concerned, Chris Watts committed these murders alone, and any manipulation or needling of him was done without the expectation that he would go all out and murder his entire family. All that is to say, I think that Chris originated all these theories about how other people might have contributed to the murders. Ever since I started analyzing Chris Watts and Nichol Kessinger 6 months ago, I've been saying that Chris is a calculating psychopath, and that means that he has no remorse for what he did, and he has no empathy for anyone else. As a result of that, we must be very skeptical whenever he tries to implicate anyone else but himself for the murders. And now, like clockwork, a month after the clip I just played at the intro of this video, Chris is directly blaming Nichol for the murders. How do you get someone like that to tell the truth? I'm Deception Detective, an attorney trained in statement analysis. This channel exposes lies and manipulation. In today's video, we're going to watch an interview he did with the FBI in 2019 to look at the techniques that they use to manipulate manipulators. This is my 4th video analyzing this interview, and in this part of the interview, the interviewers are going to shift into interrogation mode. I've watched the first few minutes of this, so I'll point out where that shift occurs so you can also spot it, and then I'll point out the techniques that they use as they arise. Before we get started, I want to give a quick shout out to Watch the Obsession. Without further ado, let's listen.
Are you crying? Is he crying?
It's like, she's got mascara. She didn't wash her face when she got home. She had makeup on still, so mascara was running all over her and stuff like that. Yeah, nothing about that conference. I just wish I could take all of that. The whole everything back, everything. But
so then when did it turn?
As far as that conversation, just at the end when I was telling her, like, I told her I didn't love her anymore. That's when it happened.
What happened?
She told me to get off her, and then I put my hand about it.
Okay.
Did you say she said something like that you were hurting the baby or something?
That was before that. Because, like, when I was straddling her, it was kind of like around her waist type deal.
Why did you get on her like that?
I just, when we got on the bed, that's just where I got on.
Is that so she would listen to you?
I felt like she could probably listen to me just laying beside her, but I got on top of her. And every time I think about it, I'm just like, did I know I was going to do that before I got on top of her?
Really? That's an interesting thought, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know if you knew.
If you've seen the first 3 installments of this series, you'll know that we're about an hour into the interview. We're an hour and 1 minute in. And so far, the interviewers have been keying in on 2 main questions. Did Chris have an accomplice in the murders? And were the murders premeditated? The 3 detectives who are interviewing him, FBI's Graham Coder, Colorado Bureau of Investigation's Tammy Lee, and Frederick Police Department's Detective Dave Baumhover, have been asking those same questions in different ways over the past hour. And in my earlier videos in this series, we've cataloged all the ways that Chris has evaded giving direct answers to those questions, whether it's by going off on tangents, or being vague, or hedging what he says with uncertainty expressions like I suppose, or weakening modifiers, or skipping over the details altogether, or doing a very common evasion tactic of saying what didn't happen instead of what did happen. All of these are cards in my deception deck. Obviously, the interrogators have picked up on this. And now that they've picked up that he's being deceptive, they're going to shift into interrogation mode. So when I hit play, pay attention to how their questions change, and then we'll get into how you can use the techniques that they're about to use in your own life to get manipulative people to admit the truth.
Just like everything that happened that morning, I don't know, like I try to go back in my head. I'm just like, I didn't want to do this, but I did it. It's everything just kind of like.
Felt like you had to?
It just felt like it was I don't even want to say it felt like I had to. I just felt like there was already something in my mind that was implanted that I was going to do it, and I woke up that morning, it was going to happen, and I had no control of it.
You never thought about it before?
It was just like I don't want, like when, like just like in the sentencing hearing, that prosecutor said it takes 2 to 4 minutes, something like that to happen. Like why couldn't I just let go? I didn't.
Oh, I didn't.
I just let
Was
go.
it feeling like it was in motion and you just couldn't stop it?
Yeah, it was just like I don't even want to know what she saw when she looked back at me. Honestly,
Did you look at her? What was she doing?
wasn't hiding.
Why do you think she wasn't fighting?
You know, maybe she was praying. Maybe she was just. Now I read the Bible. It said, where the scripture says, "Don't forgive these people for they do not know what they do."
Mm-hmm.
Maybe she was saying that. I don't know what she was saying in her head, but she, like when you guys told me, like, take off your shirt and check for defensive wounds, and there wasn't going to be any. She didn't fighting. I don't know why.
If she didn't could she grab your arms, or were her arms pinned down, or?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't think like I moved toward my knees or around her arms or anything. It's just kind of like when I got on top of her, we started talking. That was it. It's kind of like in my head, or like in the back of my head, that was going to happen. And just like at the end of the conversation, it was just like, that's what happened. I just wish I could have let go.
Did it seem like it was that long? 2 to 4 minutes? How long did it seem for you?
It almost kind of felt like it was longer almost, because it felt like time was standing still. It's kind of like I just saw my life just disappearing before my eyes, but it just like I couldn't let go. It was like somebody else, like if you picture somebody else around you, holding your hands, holding you, keep you from not letting you go.
At some point there was a statement.
Chris said that it felt like someone else was forcing him to kill Shanette. Right, so even psychologically, he's trying to pass the blame somewhere else besides himself. He also said something along the lines of, "I knew this was going to happen," which might suggest premeditation. And the detectives picked up on this. That's why I think there was that moment of silence. Earlier in this interview, there weren't so many long pauses. There was lots of back and forth, and they would let him go off on tangents because they were in the elicitation stage of the interview. And this is something I've written about over in the DD forum. A typical interview follows 3 stages. We have the open statement, where you're not guiding the speaker. You want them to pick all their own words and do as much talking as they can so that they reveal what's important to them. Then you move into the interview stage. And this is where you gather missing information, ask follow-up questions, and assess their reliability. Do you feel like they're telling you the truth, or are they lying to you? And if you determine that they're being deceptive, that's when you shift into interrogation mode, where you get a little bit more accusatory, you start using leading questions, and you start using silence. Instead of a back and forth rapport, you start pausing to let the speaker know that they should continue talking without actually asking them to talk. And I'll dive deeper into this as we go. But for now, listen to where the detectives don't come to Chris's rescue when he stops talking. Listen to where they start pausing and using silence to try to keep him talking.
It just like I couldn't let go. It was like somebody else, like if you picture somebody else around you, holding your hands, holding you, keep you from not letting you go.
At some point there was a statement about rage. Do you feel like you're in a rage at that point? How do you?
That's the only way I can describe it, honestly. Like a snap, something. I mean, I know. I guess my attorney had said like some, strangulation is more of like a I don't know, passionate type thing. I'm just like, I don't know how that can be passionate.
It's just intimate because you're right. And now
Yeah.
using your own hands. It's a lot different than someone standing across the room and you shooting them or something like that. So
It just felt like somebody was like behind me, just like I just couldn't let go.
It's interesting to me because there was a lot of things in your life that were like that, right?
Lots of the comments of my videos ask, well, DD, why would Chris lie in this interview about whether or not the murders were premeditated? Since in 2019, at the time this interview is being done, he's already been convicted and he's already been sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And I actually addressed this in an earlier video. He could be lying because he sincerely blacked out and something was guiding his hands, and he's making up parts to be cooperative with the police. Or the murder was premeditated homicide 1, and he wants to portray it as if it were a crime of passion, or because he's protecting Nichol Kessinger, or any other number of reasons. But so far, what we can say for sure is that he's extremely sensitive about it. In other words, I can't say exactly why he's lying. People lie for a bunch of different reasons. He might even just be so delusional that he thinks, hey, if I can convince the world that this was a crime of passion and not a premeditated murder, maybe I'll get pardoned by the governor or the president. Although, if I were to bet on it, I would say it's a case of vanity. He wants to be seen as someone who killed in the heat of passion rather than a cold blooded killer. And I think that's why Chris brought up the word passion here, even though he's acting like he doesn't know what passion means in the context of a homicide. There's a huge legal distinction between murder 1, premeditated murder, and murder 2, such as a crime of passion. I think the detectives picked up on this, and that's why they're reacting the way they are.
Strangulation is more of like a, I don't know, passionate type thing. I'm just like, I don't know how that can be passionate.
it's just intimate because you're right. And now
Yeah.
using your own hands. It's a lot different than someone standing across the room and you shooting them or something like that. So
It just felt like somebody was like behind me, just like I just couldn't let go.
It's interesting to me because there was a lot of things in your life that were like that, right? Where you're just like, maybe felt out of control or maybe felt like, I don't know why I couldn't take a step back or, like even when you said, when your buddy was like, let's go to the football game, you wanted to say yes, you could.
Yeah, I wanted to. Like I never been. I haven't been to a football game since North Carolina, so I was like, yeah, sure. Like I wanted to say that.
Yeah.
I wanted to just text it. Yeah, no, I should have fell through. Can't go.
So then what?
Just but just after shenanigans. I guess once she was gone, it was just like I didn't know what was going on. It's like it was like a traumatic. I don't know what you call it, traumatic event type, and everything. And like I was shaking. I didn't know what had happened. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what I had done. I still wasn't in that right state of mind. I don't think like I was in control of what I could think or what I could do at that point in time.
Passion, shock, state of mind. For someone who doesn't know what passion means in the legal sense, Chris does use a lot of legal buzzwords. I think he's fishing for the interrogators to tell him that what he did might have been a crime of passion, the same way people fish for compliments by dropping subtle hints about what they want you to compliment them about. And you'll notice that the interrogators are not doing what you might expect them to do if all you know about interrogation comes from the movies. They're not shouting at him and saying, you know, you planned this, or accusing him of lying, or threatening to impose extra penalties on him if he doesn't tell them the truth. They are going along with him. Well, yeah, that seems to be the case, that you really didn't have much control of your life. Other people really were controlling you. You didn't shoot her from across the room. It was up close and personal. You strangled her, just like a crime of passion. And what are they doing when they do this? Are they actually falling for what he's saying? No. What they're doing is they're making him feel in control of the conversation so that he's more likely to open up. And this is something else I've written about over on the DD forum in the patron section. When I was preparing to interview Chris and Katie Proudfoot for my Sebastian Rogers series, the idea is to make the person you're interrogating feel comfortable enough to admit the truth to you. So if they can help Chris feel like what he did had a rationale to it, and that they don't blame him for it, or that it was someone else's fault besides his own, even if it was just those phantom hands controlling him and pushing him to do it, or reassuring them that society won't blame them even if they open up, they are more likely to eventually admit the truth. So far in the Chris Watts case, it's unclear exactly how he murdered his daughters. Even the exact cause of death for Shanann, I think, is still in dispute. And that's because the bodies were so decomposed by the time they were recovered. Counterintuitive as it may seem, playing dumb and going along with what Chris says is the correct interrogation technique. And you'll also notice how they use silence to prod him to continue talking without making it look like they're in control by asking him a question and eliciting a response. Instead, they sit there quietly when he's discussing things they want him to talk about so that he feels like he's in control and he just continues orating. That's the power of silence. Although they are using some other small prompts, and I've written about a few of them in the deception deck. So once we see some more of those, I'll point that out, probably the next time we pause.
Like most people say, like, why just call 911? Why it's like, unless you're in that situation,
You don't know.
We don't know what we would have done. It's easy to play Monday morning quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that.
Like I said, if somebody shoots somebody, you don't know what they was going through their mind at that point in time.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what you'd have done.
So what happened next?
Well, okay, man.
So what happened, Bill came in? What she said?
Oh, why?
Did she hear something? Is that what she came in?
Obviously, I think.
Okay. What'd you tell her?
Well, you don't feel good.
And then, did that happen with Bella right in that room?
Not proper.
What happened?
She walked in as she thought, she was sleeping.
Mm-hmm. Did you take her back to her room?
Put Shannon in that sheet and found sleep.
Okay. Then what?
Carried her downstairs.
I've actually listened to this part of the interview before, and it's hard to listen to because Chris is about to discuss what happened to his daughters. But you'll already notice how reticent he's become. He was much more open about talking about Shanann than he is about the daughters. And I'm going to go over why I think that is, and it ties back to everything else we've said in this video. But because Chris is becoming more reticent and more closed off, the silence isn't working. When the detectives are silent, Chris simply stops talking. So what they're doing now is using different prods to get him to continue. And other prods you can use besides silence are closed questions that advance the story, like, then what? What happened next? If someone says something, okay, then what did you say? Or did they say anything else? These questions do not alert the subject that you're actually in control. You're simply being curious and you're advancing them down the track of what you want them to talk about. Sort of like a train on a track, the interrogators want to keep Chris, who's the train, moving down the track to a broken bridge that it will eventually fall off if they can keep it on the track long enough. But if they start giving Chris, the conductor, too many directions, he might look up and notice that there's a bridge, go off track, and they need to put him back on. Let me know in the comments if that analogy works for you. You'll also notice that they're using one-word prompts to keep him talking, like, yeah. And that's typical and happens naturally. And in the deception deck, I have 2 cards, one for uncooperative subjects, one for cooperative subjects. And at this point, Chris is cooperative. So there are certain words that they're using to get him to expand on his story. And so you can pick them up as we go along and know what to do. If you want to use these in your own life, I'll just read you the card. Liars often set their own traps, Aesop. When eliciting statements, maintaining engagement with cooperative subjects is crucial. Liars tend to be more open when they believe they're controlling the conversation. To subtly guide the dialogue and extract more information, use these prompt words. Use so to encourage detailed responses. Use and to prompt additional lateral information. Use meaning to gain clarity on the context. And say now to delve into other actions and thoughts of particular moments. Practicing using these words can help you guide a conversation without alerting the other person that you are in control.
Back my truck up.
At that point, were the girls still there? Okay. So then she lands in the truck. Then went back to the house.
We got everybody out in the truck.
Was Bella first or was Cece first?
And the truck?
Yeah, I'm sorry. So Shanann was first, and then Bella was next. Was Bella alive when you guys got in the truck? Oh, okay. What happened?
I woke back up.
Okay.
And it's, I don't really want to talk about this part, honestly.
Okay.
Those are my kids. It's my baby. I'm just talking about every night. Like, help us, you know.
Okay.
Every time I see pictures of them, I don't know how it's going to. And being a dad was the best part of my life. I took it all away.
I think that's the hardest part for us, Chris, is we see those videos, we see that love that you had for your girls. Like, it's obvious to us. And even to us, it's hard for us to understand how a dad who's given piggyback rides and, making snacks and watching princess movies and those kinds of things, how you get to that point,
Like I said, it was just like something else was controlling me that day. I had no control over what I was like to fight back.
Yeah.
Like when that prosecutor said that Bella bit her tongue, like repeatedly, I just wanted to bang my head up against the wall.
So you put Shanann in the truck and then you put the 2 girls in the truck? Were they just sitting in their car seats or I guess they didn't probably have car seats in your truck, did they?
So sitting in the back with the like in that bench,
So Shanann was back there too?
she was on the floor.
What did they say about Shanann being on the floor?
Not be okay.
What'd you tell them?
She'll be fine.
Did you have their stuff with them? With their toys and their blankets and stuff?
They had something with them that they carried. One of them, I think CC and Bella had like a blanket or something with them,
Mm-hmm.
like a pink blanket or.
What about the dog? I think one of them had a dog, right? The talked or the dog.
Yeah, one of them had like a little barking dog.
Was that with you too? Do you know?
I think it was. Trying to hard to remember, like if
Yeah.
they had like big blanket, small blanket.
So I think I saw on the video that you put a gas can or something in the back of your truck. Was that right? Did you have different plans?
And I
Where
was,
did you put that in there?
I don't know what was going through my head. I felt like maybe I could just get rid of myself at the same time. Felt
Now it should all be coming together for you. The pauses, if the silence doesn't work, a prompt word, and if that doesn't work, a closed-ended question to move the story along. And always the focus is on premeditation. Even when Tammy Lee brings up the gas can, she asks about what his plans were. Did he have different plans? Did something change? But the reason I'm pausing here is to point out why I think Chris became so reticent about his daughters. He was relatively detailed when he discussed Shanann compared to the girls. For example, he hasn't told us how they died, and he hasn't even confirmed, actually, if you go back and listen to what he's actually said, whether they were dead or alive when they got into the car. And I think the reason is he either knows or he's starting to realize as he's talking how absurd it would be for him to try to claim that the murder of the girls was a crime of passion. Him getting into a fight with Shanann and two adults arguing and pushing each other's buttons could lead to someone snapping and killing the other person. It's plausible, and it definitely does happen. However, toddlers like Bella and Cece, they don't shout back to their dad, and they don't push buttons to make someone snap. So the claim that he might have killed them in the heat of passion when he was seeing red doesn't stick. I think even he realizes that, and I think he's known that, which is why I've seen so many comments of people telling me that in the early versions of events, he said that Shanann killed the girls initially, and then he killed Shanann in response. And I think that's why he's not talking about how the daughters were killed. Do I think he loaded them into the van alive? Of course not.
I think I saw on the video that you put a gas can or something in the back of your truck. Was that right? Did you have different plans? Where did you put that in there?
I don't know what was going through my head. I felt like maybe I could just get rid of myself at the same time if I was doing all this, honestly.
Yeah.
You should think about that.
What'd you think about that?
I didn't feel like I deserved to live after what had happened.
Was there any thought to the whole family going away that day, to include you?
After everything had happened, that's the definite thought.
Yeah. See, it's interesting to me, and we had all kind of wondered if there was a point when you were all together, if you were all going to pass together. That to me makes sense, but that's, even though it sounds crazy, that's what a family man does, right?
Family man doesn't do what he did.
No, I know. I guess what I mean is, it seems like you guys were going to be together forever in that way. Is that maybe what was going through your head?
Honestly, I just felt like I had deserved to live.
Yeah.
The train has come off the tracks, right? Chris is no longer being cooperative ever since it became about the girls. So what do the agents do? They try to put the train back on the track. And they're also pursuing other theories, right? They're trying to get him to open up about whether or not he had plans. And one of the plans, I think it's Agent Coder suggests, is if Chris ever considered a mass suicide. No matter what the plan is, any plan at all would be a good sign of premeditation. And how does Agent Coder present this, what is actually a very insane idea? He presents it as if it's the most casual thing ever. He does all the things I said you need to do when you're trying to get someone to open up. He rationalizes it. Well, you were all going to die, might as well do it together. He shifts a little bit of the blame. He minimizes it, right? That's what a family man does. A family man makes sure that the whole family is together for eternity. He socializes it. I think he said at one point, I understand. It might sound crazy, but I get it. This is all excellent interrogation technique. And the main takeaway from this video is that if you really want to get information out of someone, you have to make them feel comfortable. Because if you start shouting or losing your cool or making threats, people don't open up and they tend to clam up and shut down. The other thing to recognize about interrogation is that it's not about showing off how smart you are or how tough you are. It's all about the subject. And if your goal is to get to the truth, You might have to play dumb. You might have to pretend you know things that you don't. You might have to pretend that you think something's great that you know is despicable. And I think you can see this starkly in the recent congressional hearings. Some people are focused on pandering to their audience, others are focused on getting sound bites for the headlines, and a couple are actually asking questions in the pursuit of truth. If you want to learn what not to do when interviewing someone, click the video on your screen now. If you want to continue this series, let's get this video to 50,000 views. You can also become a channel member and vote on who we analyze next. Until next time, stay true.